What's up, guys? Today I'm going to be teaching you not only a new opening, but how to learn a new opening. There's a saying, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You teach him how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. That's kind of what I'm going for here, okay? So D4, B5. This is called the Polish defense. It's a very surprising opening against D4, and I'm going to show you guys how I would learn it, how I would prepare for it, and then eventually this will be turned into a video that'll also go on the channel later where it's kind of all summarized into like a, a short 10, 15-minute video. But how am I going to get there? Well, you're going to learn right now. So first of all, if you'll notice, I am on Lichess. I'm not on chess.com. Now, I really like chess.com for pretty much everything else except when it comes to the opening database. Okay, I feel like Lichess is a little bit better, and here's why. As far as I know, and I could be wrong on this, if somebody knows how to do this, let me know. But as far as I know, chess.com, the pool of games that you actually see in the opening database is smaller than what's on Lichess. I think they only show you like the master games on chess.com or something like that. But what you'll notice over here on Lichess is that you have the option to select the masters database. So these are all the games from players 2200 and above, or you can go to the Lichess database. And what you'll notice when I do this, and I actually want you to see the whole thing. So I'm going to resize this here just so you can see everything. It's going to get a little smaller. Maybe I can come up here a little bit. I want you to notice at the very bottom here. There you go. See that? So what it's showing you there is the total number of games. Okay, so if you look at that, it's 1,825,477 games where B5 has been played. If I go back to the Masters, watch that number carefully. Only 643 games have been played. So that's not a lot of data to work with, right? If I'm trying to learn about this opening, I want more data. So I'm going to be going to the Lichess. Now, there's also this settings gear up here in the top right. And when you click that, notice you can filter when you're on Lichess for which ratings you want to see. So do I want to see 400 rated player games? Maybe not, because that's pretty low. Do I want to see these higher rated ones? Yeah, probably. We'll include 2200. Maybe not 2500, because that's grandmasters, and so for most of us, we're not quite there. Now, if you want to see that, you could obviously check that, but I'm going to leave it probably right there. Now we've got 1,912,000 games. By the way, before B5 is played, look at this. It's over a billion games. 1,189,904,970. It's a ton of games, okay? So you can see the value of this. Now, the first thing about B5 that I want you guys to understand, look at this. D5, knight f6, e6, e5, g6, c5, d6, c6, b6, f5, knight c6, f6. It's not even on the list as a top move. Okay. It's so far down, they don't even include it. Okay. What does that mean? Well, that means it's going to be surprising response to your opponents. Okay. Now, the other thing that I like to do when I'm doing this is turn on the analysis bar. Now, you can't see this, so I'm going to have to do a little resizing here. So just bear with me here, guys. I'm going to resize my face here, get real small so you can see what I want to show you. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make this one bigger, okay? And if you look up here, there we go. You can almost see it now. Let me just a little bit smaller here. What you will see is Stockfish right there, okay? And I realize that my face is totally covered. That's okay. Just trust me, I'm still there. All right. This button right here, if I click it, it turns on the engine, okay? And now Stockfish is telling me what are the best moves. So when I'm learning an opening, I'm going to be using both of these things at the same time. Now, it's important to note, notice how the eval jumped in White's favor there. Actually, show you the eval there. You can see that a little bit better. There's the eval, okay? And notice how it jumped in White's favor when I played b5. What does that mean? Well, it means b5 is not really a great move. But when you're playing a surprising opening, it doesn't matter. Okay, the surprise value more than compensates for that. So don't worry about that. Okay, so here we go. We're ready to get started. We've got Stockfish up there, which you'll see how to use that in just a minute. So the first thing that I always like to do is see what is most played. Is it one move or is it a couple of moves? Okay. And you want to look at the percentages to kind of get an idea of that. Okay. So, like 31% of the time E4 is played. That's a pretty big percentage, but so is 17%, knight F3, and 14 and 13 and 12. Okay. So, what this is telling me is that there's actually a wide variety of responses here, right? Like some openings, the response is just very, very high. So let me give you a good example of this. If we play the move E5, England Gambit here, I'm going to guess, yeah, 50% of the time. That's huge. One out of every two players is going to take this. Okay. and then 14% is c4, and then the rest, are less than 10%. So you can see massively, it's mostly just one move that's being played. Come back over here. Okay, 31% is still a decent chunk, but there's also quite a few that are above 10%. You've got knight f3, you've got bishop f4, you've got c4, you've got e3, and that's where it drops off. So there's really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves. Okay, e4, knight f3, or what is it, c4 and e3. There's really 5 moves that are played quite a bit against this. So that's not ideal when you're trying to go for surprise value, but we can certainly work with this. We just have to know, like, we're probably going to have to study 5 different lines if we really want to get good at this. Okay, so what I recommend you do when you're learning a new opening like this, always start with the most played move. All right, so we're going to start with e4. We're going to say, okay, what do we play against e4? And so there's a couple ways you can do this. Number one, of course, you can look at Stockfish, right? And by the way, I have it set to show multiple lines because sometimes I like to see, in a case like this, there's 3 moves here that Stockfish is recommending. They're all pretty close. The eval is pretty much the same, right? You could play a6, you could play bishop b7, you could even play c6. So I want to know that. So by the way, if you first go to Lichess and it doesn't show you that, what you're going to want to do is click these 3 bars. Oh, you can't see them. Over here, now you can see it. These 3 bars right down here at the bottom right. You can click on that, and where it says multiple lines, notice I have 3 out of 5. Okay, you can go from 1, none, I guess, but you can go from 1 to 5, essentially. And if I only have it on 1, notice now I'm only seeing this one option here. Okay, I like seeing 3. That's just me. 5 is a bit much in my opinion. You can see that. That's quite a few. You can even see them all there. I guess it's not showing. But anyway, I like 3. Okay, so let's go back to 3. There we go. 1, 2, 3. I think that looks. So here we go. E4. What are we going to do? So I'm looking here. These are the options according to Stockfish. But I'm also, and this is crucial. This is a crucial point. Look at the win percentages here for black. Okay, so if you see the white bar, that's how often white wins. The gray in the middle is the draw, which there's very few draws in this opening. Which, if you like that, great. If not, maybe don't play it. But then the black is how much does black win. And what I'm noticing here, I'm just going to scroll, and I'm looking for some big black win percentages, because sometimes there's like a random move that's not played very often, but it has a super high win rate. And if you see that, you want to investigate why is that the case. Now, we're probably going to see that as we go through this, but for now, it looks like bishop b7 is the best response here. Okay, so let's click on that. We'll make the move bishop to b7. So, okay, we can, and also, I want to try to understand like what's going on here, right? As I'm looking at this opening. So I'm attacking the pawn, and white's attacking my pawn. Interesting. So we have this tension here. And how do most players as white respond? Interesting. They don't take it. A lot of players do not take it. Most players are more worried about this than they are about taking your pawn. Okay, that's a good thing to be aware of, right? And most players actually play the move bishop to d3, which defends the pawn. Or they'll play, let's see, d5. Wow, and look at the percentage, guys. Super, super close. 21, 21, and 20. So all 3 of these moves, bishop d3, d5, and f3, are extremely, equal in how often they're played. So that's something you want to pay attention to. You're really, here's another moment where you're really going to have to learn all 3 of those. Okay, so let's start with bishop d3 and see what's going on there. And according to Stockfish, best move is probably c5 and knight f6. Okay, fine. Let's see what do the win percentages look like here. All right, knight f6. Okay, now there's something interesting here that I want to bring up. There is a gambit here that I've heard about. And because I know about it, I'm going to actually look into it. But if you didn't know about it, you would never even think to look at this, because it's one of these moves way down here. It's f5, and it doesn't actually have a good win percentage. But I know for a fact this is one of the wild gambits that you can play. Okay, yeah, f5, and it's not really looking great. Let's keep going. I want to show you guys something interesting here. Okay, bishop takes g2, yes. Queen h5 check, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky, right? Because if you're looking at this win percentage, you're thinking, wow, Nelson, why would we ever want to play this, right? Look, this looks terrible, right? Queen h5 check, and I'm going to show you why. Sometimes there's a specific reason, and if you go far enough, you can see that. Okay, g6 looks terrible for black. Let's keep going. F takes g6, huge win percentage for black. Wait a second. What just happened? Did you see that? Did you see that? It was like white was crushing, white was crushing, white was crushing until this moment when all of a sudden black has a 55% win rate if they play the move bishop g7. What's going on here? Well, I'll tell you what's going on. Look at this. Knight to f6, which is played almost as much as bishop g7. There's not a ton of games here, 399 times, right? Is a terrible move and basically loses instantly. Okay. And also these other moves also all lose, right? So that's why going back a move here, it was like, hey, white does really well in this line, only because most players playing it as black didn't know what they were doing. If you know what you're doing, you play bishop g7. And what is going on here? Let's see what does white do? They take this with check. We move our king to f8. They take this with check. Look at the win rate for black. It's even higher now, 56%. We take this, and all of a sudden, look where we're at. Even Stockfish is like, yeah, black's actually not so bad here. It's pretty equal, according to Stockfish. But the win percentages, look at this. Very good for black. So I wanted to show you this line because it illustrates that you shouldn't always discount moves just based on the win percentages, because sometimes there's funky stuff going on behind the scenes. So if there's a move that looks interesting to you, maybe check it out a little bit. Okay, now you could very easily have played this out and been like, let's see, it looks really good for white. I don't want to ever play this again. And if you didn't make it to this moment right here, you might miss it. That's part of how it goes. You don't want to analyze every line super far out. But this one, if you kind of think about it, most of these moves kind of make sense, right? White is thinking to themselves, okay, I'm going to take. Yes, I'm going to lose my rook, but I don't care because my queen's coming in. So the next few moves are very logical. We take, they go check. Only move for black, right? This is very easy to see. We have to block. Of course, white is going to be thinking, I'm going to take here, and I've got either a rook or a checkmate on the king. This looks great. Aha. And now we see the problem. If you play bishop g7, you get this crazy thing that's going. By the way, if you're wondering what's happening here, yes, the pawn takes you with check. You move. Yes, you lose a knight with check. But at the end of that, you have an attack on the queen, and you also have white's rook trapped. That's why this is actually an interesting line for black. Okay. So I'm just reiterating a lot here, but the point is, you don't always want to just abandon moves like f5 here. Like, why would I want to play f5? Sometimes they're worth considering. Okay. So, with that being said, since I know about that one, I might consider this one of the lines that I want to play as black. Or I could go back to, okay, what is Stockfish saying? C5, knight f6. See which one of those performs pretty well. C5 at 50%. That's good. Notice 48, 46, 45, 45. And C5 down here with 50%. This is what I was talking about, scanning for those high win rate lines. That's really good for black because white's only at 45%. Then you have some draws in there. Okay, so C5 and Stockfish says, hey, that's the best move. Kind of interesting looking move too. Like, why are we playing C5? Aren't we just losing a pawn? So what am I going to do? I'm going to analyze this. So C5, okay, and what does white usually play? Most people take it, and that is why black seems to do pretty well. Okay, let's take a look at that. By the way, Stockfish says C3 is the move. You should not take it. So let's see what happens to the eval bar here. Okay, it doesn't change as much as I thought it was going to. And again, I'm still scanning. And what am I noticing about this move? Knight to a6 performs even better than e6. Now, they both look pretty good for black. Okay, so if I like e6, I could do that. But knight to a6 actually looks pretty interesting. So let's check that one out. You can just click on it. And wow, look at these win rates for black. I'm loving this. So here looks like a very interesting line that I want to make a mental note of. Okay, so all right, c5. And when they take knight to a6, very funky opening here. But we're starting to get our pieces out, and it looks like we're getting some counterplay here is what's happening, I think. So let's see what keeps happening. Bishop to e3. So most people play this to try to defend their pawn. And then let's see. Stockfish and the main line here of e6 does very well for black. Okay, so e6, we're attacking it. And most players for white here really looks like they do two things. They either take this pawn or they play knight f3. Okay, so I'm going to start with the capturing here. And I'm also just kind of scanning up here. Which of these moves line up with what most people play? Bishop takes b5 does, so that's probably the best move that we'll see. a4 is what Stockfish wants, but that's never even been played, it doesn't look like, in a game, right? I'm looking at all the games here. I don't even see a4. So no human being has ever played that move, so I'm not really worried about that, right? So I'm going to focus on the ones that actually get played by people. So bishop takes b5. Okay. And what's the idea here? How does black do very well? Wow. So here's another moment where you've got two options, knight takes c5 and bishop takes e4, but look at the win rates on the bishop takes e4 move. So I'm definitely going to, since there's a similar number of games, right, 21 to 19 games, I'm going to consider this one that seems to perform much better. Looks like it sacrifices the knight, which a lot of people do capture. And that is a big part of why black does very well here, because you end up trapping the rook. And then when you get down to like 3, 2, 1 game, that's pretty much where the opening ends as far as the games will go. You can follow it more if you want, but that's not enough games to really mean much. Okay. So when I get, below 10 games, I'm like, okay, whatever. Now I start looking at Stockfish more and I see, okay, Stockfish says it's good for black because of the minus. I'm happy with this position. I see the idea. I'm going to take the rook and the game goes on. And then we could follow some Stockfish moves from here. Knight c3, take that. Knight comes out. And then, whatever. I just developed my piece like rook b8, knight e7. The game goes on. Okay, cool. But black performed very, very well on this line. So I'm pretty happy with that. And I might decide to make this the main line. Okay, so right now f5 is the main line. See that? And this is a variation you can see up here. What I'm going to do actually is right click and go make main line. Okay, because this seems to be the main thing that I want to learn and focus on. Okay, we could leave that f5 as a sideline. Okay, cool. So that is basically the first line that I want to consider. And I think I will, go with that. Now, we talked about d takes c5. There's also quite a few people that say, no thanks, I don't want to take your pawn. And they play c3. Okay, so essentially now I'm going to do the same thing that I just did for a different line. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to compile all these lines into a nice little PGN over here, right, where Litres is kind of keeping track of all these lines so that I can save them, which I'll show you how to do here in a second, come back to them later and learn them. That's basically how you learn any opening, okay? Any opening with white, with black, e4, d4, c4, doesn't matter. This is what you can do. So again, what am I going to do? Let's scan. c4, ooh, knight f6, look at that, 57%. And by the way, a little side note here, this is how I find opening traps. So if you've watched my channel for a while, you'll know there's tons of opening traps. This is how I find a lot of them. I'm just going through some common openings and I'm looking for, oh, wait a second, 57% win rate, or sometimes it's even higher, right? It's like, whoa, how did you 70% win rate? Well, there's a tricky move, and that's an opening trap that you could try, right? So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. So, okay, looks like c4 is an option, but it doesn't perform very well. And Stockfish doesn't agree with it. So I'm just going to see, yeah, Stockfish doesn't really like that. It doesn't perform very well. Okay, I'm going to delete c4. And it looks to me like knight f6 is the way to go. It's on Stockfish's list there. So let's go ahead. So knight f6. All right. So what's happening here? Well, we're attacking the pawn. I mean, that's pretty obvious for me to see. And most people respond, wow. So queen e2 is actually a good move for white according to how they perform. Knight d2 is played quite a bit, which is bad for white. And f3 is really bad. Look at that, 71%. Okay, so what I'm going to do is investigate these three moves now. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make queen e2 the move. How does black perform here? And again, I'm looking at how many games have been played. Let's see. Looks like this move e6 does pretty well. And Stockfish doesn't mind it. Also, c takes here. So, okay, let's go with e6 and let's just investigate a little bit further. Most people will play knight f3. And does black have any good moves here? 50%. It's not bad. a6. So you could just go over this plan, and I guess they're going to castle. All right. Not seeing anything amazing here, but this looks like a very playable line, so we could definitely go with that against queen 2. Other option would be we trade this first. And does that lead to any differences? Let's just scan again. Okay, I do like this. Knight c6. And let's see. Checking all of these. Okay, looks fine. Knight f3 has been played mostly. Ah, knight to b4. I like this. So I like this one better because it's a more aggressive. It looks like I'm setting a trap here. And yes, there it is. Okay, look at that. There's the trap. Bishop takes b5. So we just discovered an opening trap here. Now it's 7 moves in, so I don't know how often we're going to see this, but I did just discover a trap. So what I'm going to do is right-click, and I don't want this to necessarily be the main line now, but I want it to be higher than what it was. So I'm going to click on Promote Variation. Okay, I'm actually going to get rid of this e6 line. So going back here, if they do play queen e2, I don't want to play e6. I'm going to go for the c takes d4 lines. I'm going to go ahead and actually delete this one. And the reason you want to delete those lines that you're not going to be playing is otherwise they'll just confuse you, and you'll go back to look at it later and you'll be like, wait a second, there's so many lines. Which one did I want to play, right? So make sure you delete them right away as soon as you decide, no, I don't want to do that. I want to play a different line. Okay, that's really important. You're going to get this jumbled mess of the PGN that's not going to help anybody. Okay, so here we go. This is a very nice little trap if they play queen e2. We take, we attack the pawn, And when they defend, we jump our knight in. And it looks like we're just forgetting about this guy. But let's see what happens if they take it, because that's been played quite a few games. There's also e5, which we will have to talk about as well. But let's go ahead and just see what's going on with the trap. Oh, I see. Of course, they lose the pawn on e4, and then they have some threats here as well. So that's probably what the deal is. Let's see. Is that why it's so good? And most people notice the fork, and they try to play knight to a3. And I'm wondering if there's something with queen a5. Let's see. I don't actually see it right off the top of my head. A6 is a, wow, A6. Yeah, I wouldn't have pegged that. But notice I'm looking here. Okay, A6. And I'm also looking at Stockfish up here. A6, A6. So what is it about A6? So the bishop can't go there. Ah, you can't go here because you open up this. So you have, oh, I see it now. I see it now. Okay, so let me explain what's going on. When we played knight to b4, and allowed this capture, what we were setting up was this move. And we're threatening not only the fork here, okay, but also knight to d3 check, which is going to be a killer move. Actually, knight or bishop to d3 is going to be a killer move because it's going to stop white from castling. The king's going to be stuck in the center, and that's not how you want to start the game. So what we're doing now, white defends this one, fine. We are chasing the bishop off of the defense of that square. That's what's going on here. Okay? And I had to like follow the line far enough just to figure it out. Okay. And some people can figure it out right away. Some people have to go all the way to the end of the line. But I'm seeing it now. A6. And what's happening is the bishop's not going to be able to continue to defend that square. Because if you go bishop a4 right away, then I was going to say knight d3 check. But Stockfish says no, even queen a5 is even better, just attacking the bishop and lining up here. So maybe I was even wrong. Let me actually see. I thought I was correct there. Let's see if they play bishop c4. I was going to say d5, yes. And then I was going to say knight to d3. Okay, it is. So I was partially correct, but it works differently if they go bishop a4. There's something even better. Wow. Okay. So let's just go back and reiterate what just happened there. So here we go. At this moment, okay, against queen e2, I noticed that there was kind of two main options. We could play c takes d4, or we could play e6. The e6 line just looked sort of whatever, normal to me, nothing real fancy. But c takes d4 looked like it was a little bit tricky. I was watching the win rates, right? And I noticed some interesting things here after knight c6 with some pretty nice win rates there for black, particularly with this knight to b4 move. Also an aggressive move that attacks something, looks like it sets up an obvious capture. Those are the kind of lines that you're going to get a lot of wins from, okay? Because it's pretty obvious, like, oh yeah, if you play this against your opponent, they're going to be like, well, they're attacking my bishop, I may as well take a pawn. You're going to see it a lot, okay? But what we learned was that after bishop takes e4 already, white is just struggling to survive, okay? Now you can see Stockfish says they can survive if they castle, but that's such a weird move to allow your knight to come in there and trap the rook. Most people aren't going to play that. You can see it's been played 5 times. Okay, 5 people played it, but even in those games, they didn't do very well. So whatever. Most people play knight a3, and then we chase the bishop. And then what I mentioned before was there's actually a different trick here. I thought it was going to be knight to d3, which is not a terrible move, probably. Let me see. Yeah, it's not a bad move for black. Still -2 there, but not as good as queen a5. Okay, so let me go ahead and delete that knight d3 check move. I don't want to accidentally play that. Okay, queen a5, very powerful move. Threatening to win a piece. Of course, if the bishop moves away to save itself, now we have the double check here. When the king moves, we can snag the rook for free. And just like that, we're up a rook. Okay, super nice line, okay? And we just found it because I was just going through and looking at these lines. Now, here's where opening preparation gets kind of crazy. Okay, we just looked at this line, and now we have to go back and remember where we started from, right? And sometimes people have trouble with that, especially as you go more and more and more. But the nice thing is it's all saved for you right here. Okay? So you can just literally, I'm hitting the back arrow key, and it's just going to go backwards. Okay? I'm just going to go all the way back until where it starts to branch off. Ah, yes. This is where we kind of started from. I attacked the pawn, and we looked at queen e2. But I said there could have been knight to d2 or f3 as well. Those are also played. And so again, here we go. Now, the nice thing here is queen e2 was the best move for white. We already have a line for that. Now I want to check knight to d2. Knight to d2. And again, what am I going to do? I'm going to scan. Wow, b4, big win rate, but there's only 10 games. So again, you can't put a ton of weight on those if they only have a few games, okay? So looks like c takes d4 again, and c takes d4 is one of the moves that's on the list here with Stockfish. So let's go ahead with that one. And then usually white's going to recapture pretty much everybody. All right. And again, okay, this one's not bad. A6, 53% win rate. That's pretty good. 34 games. I do like that. It does line up with the Stockfish move here, A6. But there's also knight c6. And since I've just looked at the line where we have some knight b4 ideas, I kind of want to explore this a little bit. So I'm going to at least take a look. And then after the most logical move here, is there any good moves here for black? A knight to b4 does not work as well in this case. Look at that. It's good for white, it looks like. So let's see. Let's just verify that. Why is that the case? Because in 92% of the games, they played bishop b1, which was the top Stockfish move. And now our knight is just looking really silly over here. Yeah. So this is a totally different situation. It does not do very well. So I'm going to back up. I'm not going to play that one. And I think what I'm going to do is instead, let me see. A6 there was pretty good. A6 here is the top Stockfish move. So if I don't like any of the lines, sorry, I'm on 92. If I don't like any of the lines that I'm finding from what people played, a lot of times I'll just say, you know what, let's just go with what Stockfish says. So Stockfish recommends A6 here. And then let's see if okay, a few people have played knight G3. And then Stockfish says C takes D4, which, yes, does pretty nice on the here. Okay, so we'll go. Oh, now it's saying D6. So I'm going to give it a minute to analyze. I'm saying D6 now. Has that ever been played 12 times? Okay, I'm going to go with e6 because it's a more natural looking move, and since it was so close. All right, fine. And then most people are going to castle. And then looks like a couple of options. C takes d4, seems fine. And what's the follow-up going to be here? Bishop e7 or d6, according to Stockfish. Nothing really crazy is jumping out at me here. H6 actually does pretty well, which is interesting. Let's see if Stockfish likes that move or not. Okay, doesn't really love it. So I don't know that I'm going to I don't think I'm going to play H6 there. All right, I was going to remove that. All right, so we'll just stick with, I don't know, Bishop E7, I guess. Keep it simple. This is kind of a, nobody fell for our traps. They just played some normal moves, and here we have a decent position. Okay, nothing crazy. All right, let's go back again, and instead of knight to D2, there is this move F3, which is not good. Look at this, 60%, 64%, 57%, 75%. Whenever you see so many black percentages, something is bad about the move, and we're going to find out what it is. So C takes D4. It's a Stockfish move. It also does very, very well. 20 games, not a ton, but it's enough that I think there's something there. So let's take a look. C takes D4. C takes D4. All right. And what do we have? Queen B6, 73%. Very high. E6 also does pretty well. And it's also a Stockfish move. But I am very interested on why this move does so well. So let's explore this a little bit. Knight to E2 to defend the pawn. Okay. And I wonder what happens on bishop E3. They both are pretty bad. So let's start with knight E2. Then C, knight C6. Probably going to transpose the same position here. Okay, so we attack it twice. They defend it twice. Okay, what happens? E5. And now we see why this line does so well for black. Because they've put themselves into a pin. We're actually going to win a pawn is what it looks like. So bishop C2 is what they play to try to defend. Takes. It looks like they are defending. So what's going on? Aha. There we have it. There we have it. And I'm also looking at Stockfish as well as these games in case for some reason the games didn't show it. In this case, they do line up. Bishop C5. There's a pin there. We win a piece. Even if they take, we grab on E3. Wow. And the knight can't really escape. Is that what's happening? If the knight tries to escape, this is just nasty for white. That's what people have played. But according to Stockfish, D5, and you're just crushing. Because white can't castle. You're going to castle probably pretty soon. I see. This looks very, very good. Okay, wow. So, all that to say, and again, this is why opening study can be tricky. There's a lot there. But all that to say, see, how did we even get here? Yes. After F3, that one, F3, we can trade, attack the pawn, and if white goes for the sort of normal plan of just defending it twice, we attack it twice. We have a very nice idea here of just playing E5, taking advantage of the pin. Okay, These are the ideas that win you games out of the opening just like that. Like, they just win you games. So this is, definitely one that I wanna keep my eye on, okay? And if they go back, boom. They took with the bishop, I'm just curious. I guess you would do the same thing. You would probably just take it, yep. And then however they take, you just, again, bishop comes out. And again, you have this crazy attack here, probably just castle or rook, doctor say rook c8, yep. So just piling on the pressure here. Let's see, how do we proceed? Bishop a6, wow. So just using these bishops and using the fact that these dark squares are so weak, you're going to play b4 and back. So very nice opening. I'm liking this so far. Okay, I think I'm going to stop here. I don't want this video to get too long, and also I just get tired. So what I usually do is do a little bit like this, then I'll take a break and come back when I have time. Okay, so we've got all these lines here, and when I'm just hitting the right arrow key, it's just going to go through. And if I ever get to a branching spot, just want to point this out. Oops, I didn't already pass it. If I ever get to a branching spot, like right here, we've got c5 or f5. If I'm happy with the one that's highlighted, I can just keep hitting the arrow key. If I want to go to the other one, I can hit the down arrow key, and it'll move over to, I'm going to go up, down. You see how it's changing that, right? And I can choose which line I want to see, but I'm going to stay on c5. And then if they take me, yeah, I'm fine staying on that. Let's see, what did we looked at this. Okay, of course. Great. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this line. Okay. And you can go back later and add more lines in if you feel like, oh, you know what? I'm worried they might play this or that. Add it on. Okay, so how do I save this? So what I'm going to do, I think the easiest thing, let me see, where's the, what's the easiest way to do this? Do you want to, basically what you want to do is turn it into a study, okay? And I think, yeah, I think it's this one. Oh, you can't even see it. Hold on. Okay, at the very bottom right there. Okay, there you go. You see where it says study over here? You're going to click on that. Create study. And I don't want to make sure it doesn't lose my, yep, that's what I wanted to avoid. What I just did right there. So, wow, I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it because this stuff happens. This stuff happens. I have the video, so I'll just watch it again and I'll put these moves in. But you have to be careful. I don't actually do this all the time. So usually what I do is I will create the study first. I know there's a way to take the lines and turn it into a study, but clearly I totally just messed that up. All right, guys, so here's what the website will actually look like when you're on the analysis tab. So lichess.org/analysis. And usually what I do so that that doesn't happen, I don't lose the, the study, is I'll actually make the study first. And I don't know why I didn't do that this time. I just started analyzing. I know there's a way that you could just go straight from the study to this, from the analysis to the study, but clearly I didn't do it correctly. Anyway, what you're going to do is go up to Learn, Study. Okay, and you're going to click on that. And it's going to show you a bunch of stuff, but what you care about is this green button over here. You're going to click Create Study. Polish Defense, name it whatever you want. Okay, and I don't want it to be public. I want it to be unlisted for now. Is fine. Let's see. You can probably just leave most everything. You could even make it public here if anybody sees it. All right, I'm going to click Start. You're down at the bottom here. Okay, Chapter 1 is fine for now. Let's see. You could paste something in. So this is probably what I needed to do. Copy the PGN from previously, paste it in here, and it would have been good to go. Instead, I lost it. That's probably what I should have done. I don't know. Anyway, sorry. Create chapter. Okay, so here we go. We have Polish Defense Chapter 1. You can see that there at the bottom. And here we go. I'm going to come over here, flip the board. And I like it wider so I can see it on the side. And now I'm going to go ahead and put the moves I was looking at just a second. 4b5. And now it's actually saving it in this Polish defense study. Okay, so e4. So just as an example, let's say c5. All right, cool. I'm done. I want to save it. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I can actually just close this out, go somewhere else. Let's go to puzzles. I don't know. Go back to Learn, Study. And if I go to My Studies over here on the left, there's Polish defense. I can click it. And now it's saved what I've done. Okay, so don't do like I did the first time. Do like I did just now. That's going to be the thing. Apologize for that. Hopefully you still learned something, and I'll go back in later and find those lines. I'll remember it, or I'll just watch the video, whatever. But anyway, that's basically what you do. You just keep going until you feel like you've covered most of the lines that everybody plays. Okay, and we'll keep going in part 2 of this series, and eventually I'll have a full video created on exactly what to play against. All right, guys, stay sharp, play smart, and take care.